Hello and welcome to Gold and Silver Assets. I'm Diora and it's Sunday the 14th of November 2021. I needed a bit of cheering up, so I thought we'd have a light-hearted look at finance today. I think professional comedians at the moment are having an increasingly tough time, and I think it's because of the increasing legions of miserable snowflakes who seek to just take offence at pretty much anything. So anyway, we're going to ignore them today. But look, I'm feeling pretty bad for comedians. I reckon the day that the Seinfeld series gets cancelled, that will really be the end of civilization. Anyway, fortunately, wit and humour can still be found, I discovered, on Twitter. For me, that's my main source of entertainment these days. Anyway, that's for now. I hope that doesn't disappear. Anyway, I particularly enjoy the humour of Sven Henrik, who basically brings humour to finance. Today, I want to put a smile on your face. So I present to you Funny Money. So I've split this into 4 sections and we'll start with central banks. Now, apparently someone was actually able to dig out Jerome Powell's entry in his prep school yearbook from 1972. And as you can see over here, he had some pretty ambitious aspirations there. And actually, he was voted the most likely to succeed. And hey, they were right, weren't they? Okay, next. As many of you know, Facebook Inc. rebranded itself recently as Meta. And apparently that inspired the Federal Reserve to rebrand itself as well. And so as you can see here, Jerome Powell presents Printer. No doubt Jay will be walking around with a black t-shirt and a hoodie pretty soon. This one's for any Lord of the Rings fans out there. The day may come when we stop printing currency, but it is not this day. Now, those captures that we see quite frequently now, they seem to have run out of traffic lights and bridges to use, and so they're expanding their collection. But this is one of the new ones. Now, as you can see here, they still do include bridges. Anyway, I haven't got around to filling this one in. And one thing for sure, though, here, it's definitely not the little kitty. No, it can't be the little kitty. There's actually a New Zealand version of this as well, but I didn't show it because most of you probably won't know the faces. But for the Kiwis out there who are listening, you know which faces to insert here. Next, we move to the topic of inflation. So there's a beer brand over here called Tui, and they ran a load of ads which are called Yeah Right. And they were actually, some of them were among the most complained about ads in New Zealand. And actually, you don't see them anymore. Some people found them offensive, but personally, I found that most of them were actually very clever and funny. And so I thought I'd make my own version here. It is transitory. Yeah, right. Now, the rapper 50 Cent was actually born in 1975. So if you account for inflation using the official figures, he's now $2.55. Even more if you use Shadow Stats numbers. This is one for those who have seen the movie Office Space. That's quite a nice movie. I quite enjoyed that. Jay, if you could just stop printing currency, that'd be great. And for those Grease fans, I got bills, they're multiplying. Sorry for singing. Sorry, I'm terrible singing. Now, Breaking Bad is definitely up there as one of my favourites, along with Better Call Saul. What's this, says Skylar. It's to pay for next week's grocery bill, replies Walter. Next, we talk about debt. Now, I think you're going to see a lot of this in the coming years. I borrowed money and they expect me to pay it back. It's not fair. Now, this one says, I'm looking forward to the apocalypse since it's apparently the only way that I won't have to pay back my student loans. Now, actually, I think this is more tragic than funny. It's pretty sad to say that there are so many people who have this attitude. It's just so destructive, and they don't really care about any long-term consequences. They're just thinking about themselves and thinking short-term. And I mean, here's an example. I actually know people who think sitting at home and watching Netflix and playing video games while receiving a universal basic income is actually a really attractive long-term career opportunity. And yeah, that's no joke. So here's another TUI ad that I made. The debt will soon be repaid in full. Yeah, right. And finally, we have the topic on investing. My advice is to invest in boomerangs. They have a high rate of return. Now, this one's pretty pertinent right now. I do believe that personal freedom is absolutely priceless. Having some gold coins while in prison might make the prison stay a little bit more comfortable, but at the end of the day, you're still in prison. So for those of you out there who still have some freedoms, please hold on to it and appreciate it. It's really, really important. For everything else, there's MasterCard. And again, we have the office space guy. Yeah, I'm going to have to ask you to stack some more silver. And these words of wisdom are from Spider-Man's uncle. With great investment comes great return. And we end with some words of wisdom from Morpheus. What if I told you gold preserves your wealth? Next up, the market update. We'll start with gold priced in US dollars on the daily scale. And all I can say is, yes, it's finally picked a direction. So this bit over here was pretty interminably painful, wasn't it? But that's just the way things are. Anyway, we were talking about this very important point over here, about 1830, and price shot through there quite nicely, actually. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. So I think it has picked a direction. And obviously, look, I know people are going to say we're not out of the woods yet, but you know, I mean, even when we get up to here, can we say we're out of the woods? You know, it's all relative. It all depends on what time scale you're working with. Anyway, I think this is great news. And yet again, I'm still bullish. So the next hurdle, and there are always hurdles. So the next hurdle is this area here, which is about the 1915 level, roughly. Now, sometimes you can actually get turned back just before that because, of course, we've got this area here. So it could be just 1900 even down over here before something happens. And, you know, there is the potential that we go up to there and then come all the way back down to retest this, which will be a real pain. It might not even touch that line, though. It might only just go up to maybe, you know, because this is quite good support over here. So about, what, 1830-ish again. So that is a possibility, but, you know, we don't know whether that's even going to happen. Sometimes given, I have to say, given that there's a lot of green candles here, it will need a bit of a break because it does get tired, poor thing. So yeah, there will be a pullback at some point, but on the bigger time scales, I think this is a very positive development because we've got higher lows and we've got now have a higher high here on this time scale over here. So yeah, very happy with that. Okay, next we have silver in US dollars on the daily scale and a similar story. And we were saying maybe this was a kind of head and shoulders bottom, inverse head and shoulders, as it were. And if that is the case, well, we've broken out there, you know. So sometimes it could come back a little bit to retest, in which case we're looking at about what 24.50. But in terms of the resistance above, I think we're looking at this $26 level for a couple of reasons. That has been a strong support and resistance for the past year. So this is just one example, but if you zoom out and even look on the weekly scale, you'll see that that's a very important level. And of course, if we join these two highs here, that coincides with that as well in terms of timing over the next week or so. So if we do get turned back, I think that is the level that we're going to potentially have problems with. And it might not be what we really want is for a weak rejection. So, if it goes here and faffs around there for a bit, that would be a really, really good sign there. And again, this seems to be in this kind of short-term uptrend. And I think we're heading for that elusive $28 level. And I think the next time we get to that, I think it's going to crack, in which case we've got a lot of thin air above that. But look, we've got to be patient and just sit and wait, really. But yeah, again, this is looking really nice. We had looked at that gold-silver ratio a couple of weeks back, and I'd drawn this line at that point, and I said it kind of felt like it wanted to drop through there. I think it was at that point that I had discussed that. And of course it did that. It broke through, came back up, retested that line a couple of times, and then drop back down. And again, this looks like it's forming something like this, in which case if it drops much further, then we've got a drop down into the mid 60s really, which again would be great for both gold and particularly for silver as well. So this is looking bullish for the precious metals. Then we move on to the GDX on the daily scale. And what's happened here, again, we've not only made a higher low, we've also made a higher high. And now the next hurdle here will be this line, which goes back to, basically it joins the highs from August onwards. And so 36.50 roughly, I'd say, that's the next hurdle there. And below here, what I've done is the distance from the 200-day moving average here. And we'd already spoken in the last couple of weeks about how that downtrend had been broken on this, and that had occurred roughly around here. So now what we can do is start drawing this uptrend line. Now, of course, this is only going to work on the shorter time frames, and that's one of the things with this moving average is you have to kind of decide what time frame you're looking at, because if you're looking, let's say, at longer time frames, basically this can dip below, but it can still be in an uptrend kind of thing, So yeah, you just have to watch out for that. But for now, I've drawn it there, and potentially, I think if this comes back up here and gets rejected, we may potentially retest this line at some point, but I don't know if it's going to be now or at a later stage. Okay, and now this is the GDX to gold ratio, and I've put this on the weekly scale. And so when this moves downwards, then that means that the gold miners are underperforming gold. basically. Whereas if it goes up, then the miners are outperforming gold. So we have been in the doldrums with this for quite some time, haven't we? And interestingly, you know, I mean, it kind of looks like it's double bottomed here, this ratio, doesn't it? And the other thing to note is that here we've got this kind of thing here, and at this point that's a 50% retracement of this move up here, which makes me wonder if this is potentially over. Also, you know, we had some support over here and over here basically. So what we're looking for, particularly if we're bullish for gold and silver, is for this to move upwards. And so it already seems to have started, but look, it's still early days. We don't know if this downward trend has reversed. I think to determine that, we need this high to be knocked out over here. Now, with these ratios, it's very difficult to give you an exact number. You kind of have to make these on your own trading view chart, just because, you know, we're talking about a lot of decimal places here, and so, you know, it just goes 0.2, 0.3, and so, you know, you'd have to increase the decimal places and fiddle about with the chart a little bit to get the exact numbers. But I don't usually bother. I just kind of look at the chart and draw the lines and do it that way. So what we're looking at is, so I've drawn a line from these two highs, and so I think once we get above this, it's going to be looking promising. But what the big one is going to be getting above this line here, which joins this low here, as well as kind of this high here, and this high here. I think that's going to be quite momentous for the metals. Sorry, for the miners actually, yeah. Gold miners, if we get above that level. So I don't know when that's going to happen. Sometimes these things can take ages, but yeah, let's see. That I thought that was quite interesting. And then we'll look at the silver miners. This is the SILJ on the daily scale. And so price had dropped here. From memory, I think that was roughly, was it the 60% retracement? I can't remember. Anyway, I've got it on my previous videos there. I try not to put too many things on my charts. So, you know, because if I'd added this to this chart, it's just going to make it look messy. So I try and keep things as clean as possible to make it easy for you as well as for me. But on my actual trading view, I do keep them there, but you can actually hide the drawings and you can bring them back whenever you want as well. But yeah, I just try to keep things as uncomplicated as I can, as simple as possible. Okay. So we were talking about this pattern here, and that 14 level was going to be crucial, and we burst through there, which is fantastic. So we have made a higher high and a higher low again. So we are in a short-term uptrend here as well. Now, one of the other things we were looking at was this distance from the 200-day moving average, and we joined these highs here. And this week it actually did break out. So you can see it's just poked above that line there. Now, the interesting thing to note here is that we are pretty much at that 200-day moving average. So, you know, look, we may get a bit of a rejection there. We do have a gap here that hasn't been filled. Now here, there is a small gap here, which it seemed to try to fill and then just reversed. And so I'm thinking that will probably get left alone now and left behind, but let's see. But this one might get refilled, and that would fit in with that retest over here of that breakout before moving upwards. And we're looking for a target of around here. Now, what happens here, of course, is another and it is another thing entirely. So we'll just have to see what's going on at that point. But yeah, this is the target for this pattern. So again, I think looking promising. And then finally, we'll look at the SILJ to silver ratio. And so again, we're looking at what point are we going to see mega moves in the miners. So in terms of the silver miners, you can see back here in 2016, that was phenomenal for silver miners, absolutely phenomenal. Look at this. Silver miners outperformed silver by a huge amount. Look at this. It's like almost a straight line up, isn't it? And it happened very, very quickly over a short time period there. Of course, since then, we've had this grinding downwards movement in this ratio, but again, it's kind of slowing down. And let's see. I don't know for sure if this is going to if this is in the process of turning around or not. I haven't drawn the line here, but the first thing we need to break is this line here. So maybe 0.6 is the important point there. I think if we get above that, we're highly likely to get to here. But yeah, I think the real mega moves are going to be once we break out above that level. Now I don't know whether we're ever going to get something like that again, but hey, you never know. Yeah, I wasn't in it for that one at the time for silver, so missed that one. Yeah, I wasn't around at the time. Anyway, that's it from me for this week. Don't forget, I'm also available on Odyssey, and I'll put the link in the description if you want to see me over there. There's no ads or anything over there. Anyway, hope you're all doing well. All the best and see you next week. Bye.